Hello, everyone. We are back after over a month. Welcome again to Across STEM with YSI, a podcast where we explore how science, medicine, and storytelling and more intersect across cultures, communities, and time. I'm your host, Amirali Barani, and today's guest is someone who's truly embodying resilience, service, and purpose in STEM. Joining us today is Arian Ariay, a University of Washington biology graduate, aspiring physician, neonatal neuroscience research assistant at UW Medicine, SHPAP ambassador and national alumni advisory board member with the AAMC, and a powerful advocate for equity, mentorship, and representation in medicine. Yes, I know he's a lot of things. And he's also fluent in four languages, deeply involved in leadership and community work, and already contributing to published research in neonatal neuroscience and global lifestyle medicine. Arian's story spans continents, classrooms, and clinics, and his work reminds us that medicine isn't just about treating disease, it's about building trust, dignity, and hope. Today, we'll explore Arian's journey into medicine, his work in neonatal neuroscience, the role of mentorship and DEI in STEM, and how lived experience can shape more compassionate healthcare systems. So, Arian, welcome to Across STEM with YSI. It's a big pleasure to have you here. How are you doing today, and where are you joining us from?
Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me and the wonderful introduction. While you were talking about me, you may have realized my cheeks already turned red. Appreciate those kind words. But no, thanks very much once again for having me at the Across STEM with YSI. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm here just sitting at home, together with family. Just another week, another weekend, trying to get through the day. But yeah, no, really looking forward to sharing more about our experiences and see how we may be able to inspire the YSI community.
Amazing. Really glad to hear that. You describe yourself as an aspiring physician who wants to treat patients not only medically, but also through authentic human connection. Where did that philosophy come from?
Certainly, no, I'm glad you've asked. So one thing that I always look at is who we are. And what I look forward is like acknowledging that we are human beings at the end of the day, right? Of course, many of us, we have our goals in academia and career, as well as various other platforms. Though I look at myself and I say, who am I? So at the end, I am a son, a brother, a friend, a community member, and these are the humanitarian values that I would like to encompass. So when we're talking about medicine, right, it doesn't necessarily happen immediately and say, okay, I want to pursue medicine or healthcare professional in general, right? Something happens that provides that light bulb moment, right? And prior to that, there are these built experiences that allowed us or that led us to, experience that moment specifically, right? And it wasn't necessarily that I was born to be a physician, or rather, the moment I came to this world, I like, okay, I want to become a physician, right? There were built experiences that built our character, and those are the values that I would like to encompass throughout my practice. And of course, medicine or these healthcare professional tracks, they are, they truly have these rigorous trainings. And time to time, throughout these rigorous trainings, we are challenged by who we are as an individual, in addition to being aspiring healthcare professionals. And at those moments, staying true to ourselves and remembering who we are as we step out of that patient room or just that hospital setting, that's what we're going to remember. And again, these are what I've learned from my elders and people that I've talked to. So these are the values I would like to really encompass, because at the end, we're treating lives and not necessarily textbooks or things that we've learned in academia. Those are just some supplements that allowed us to widen our perspective toward an idea where we can implement to maximize the quality of our patient care.
Beautiful, beautifully said. And especially in medicine, it's just so human based, human, there's so much human connection. And it's so important that that authentic human connection, the care, the whether you're treating a patient, like you get to know them on a personal level at times. Um, it's so important to embody that, to embrace it, to appreciate that as a physician, as a nurse, as whoever who works in healthcare, because after all, you're doing it for humans, for other human beings. And I love that you have that perspective, and I hope whoever goes into medicine, whoever wants to be a physician like you, understands that and appreciates that to the fullest extent. My next
100%,
question
100%.
for you is so you speak multiple languages, as I mentioned, and among these languages are Farsi, that I also speak, Dari, Turkish, that I speak a bit as well, and English. Very impressive, first of all. How has being multilingual shaped the way you connect with people and communities, especially in healthcare spaces?
For sure. So, well, Farsi and Dari, I always consider them as same language. I do have my own little story that I'm more than happy to share later on if we have enough time.
Sure.
But so, I feel like there is a special connection when you and the person across you are able to speak the same language, and again, there's this instant connection that allows you to reflect on your experiences, because a language, I don't think it necessarily consists of words, but also consists of stories, experiences, and history that led them to be at the space that they're in. Then, well, it's quite funny because there is a word in Turkish which is known as topram. Have you heard of the word topram?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And it's interesting. As soon as I get to speak with people, no, let's say they do not know each other at all, and as soon as they say, hey, where you come from, what language you speak, where did you live, and so on and so forth, they would instantly use that word and say topram, which means like for those who may not be aware, which is like my sand, or someone who lived in the same land as I did, right? And I've had various instances where, for instance, patients felt more comfortable as they understood that I'm able to speak the same language as they do, and share aspects that they may not be they may not feel comfortable sharing with just any other person. And it certainly provides a source of credibility without not doing anything, right? As soon as you say that, hey, I'm speaking the same language as you do, there's this kind of the person across you kind of perceives that you would truly understand what they've gone through, their past experiences, and specific conditions that led them to be your patient in that case. So language, I think it really brings not only minds but also hearts together, that allows you to connect in a way which it's truly special. You don't necessarily put in extra effort. Of course, you have put in the effort to learn the language, but then when time comes, you're not putting in extra effort to gain that credibility. But and the only thing you say is, hey, I speak the same language as you, I've lived the same place as you did, and that pretty much opens up so many doors that you may not even imagine.
Yeah, it's a bridge. It serves as a bridge between people, I think. I mean, doesn't just have to be in healthcare. Like you're walking down the street, you hear someone speaking your language, like, oh my God, that person, who knows? They might be like a distant cousin or something, right? After
Right.
all, they probably come from the same place as you and have lived some similar experiences. So there's just so much you can relate with someone else when it comes to language. And the more you speak, the more you can relate with more people. Like with you, speaking four languages, it's really an asset. And especially in a field like healthcare, it can really go a long way. Now, your educational journey has taken you from Green River College to the University of Washington in Seattle. What were some of the biggest transitions or challenges that you faced along the way?
Certainly, another wonderful question. Um, just say what was you about?
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry, I'm kind of interrupted. Wait.
Okay.
So another wonderful question. Some of the challenges I faced. So Green River was a community college, and we've had much smaller class sizes compared to University of Washington, where taking courses like organic chemistry and biochemistry. Man, there were in organic chemistry, I think there were close to 300, whereas biochemistry there were close to 500 people, and there was a huge difference in dynamic when it comes to learning and just seeing how I absorb information when I am together with 40 people versus 500 people. It's truly different. And so it's something that, before I even say anything, I would say one of the main reasons that led me to go to a smaller institution like Green River College was the aspect of seeing what works for me. Because by the time I became a freshman, it was my second year in the United States, and prior to then, I did not have any English knowledge. So I've had to make a decision on seeing what I learned best, what allows me to uptake the information, but also utilize it in a way that could allow me to succeed in classes as well as conversations with other people. So then I reflect on those experiences, seeing what I was in classroom with 40 people versus 500 people. I reflect and I said, hey, if I were to begin my journey at a classroom where there are more than 300 people, then there's no way that I would actually get the chance to talk with people and learn in a way that allows me to follow my own pace. So one of the biggest challenging was really the difference in class sizes. On the other hand, the aspect of creating community. At Green River College, we've had way less way less people compared to University of Washington. And as I would step out of the classroom, I would come across people who I may have met a couple of days ago or just sometime in the past, and be like, "Oh, hey, yeah, how's it going? What you're up to, and so on and so forth." But then, as soon as I stepped out of the classroom at the University of Washington, I look around myself, and there are hundreds of people and just walking across and following their own way to a classroom or whatever destination that may be. And I say, man, I don't know any of these people. And it was just truly interesting. And as I've got those questions, there were this feeling of loneliness that I've had at the University of Washington, especially within the first 2 quarters. I thought I am someone who would rather have comfort in speaking with people, have conversation, get to know each other, create friendships. I thought I'd feel comfortable, but it didn't necessarily work the way that I've expected. So speaking of those courses, we also have our quiz sections.
Yes.
Though what I realized at the end is people who have taken who are currently taking organic chemistry have already shared classes in the past, whether it's Gen Bio, Gen Chem, and other electives, and they've in some way they've already created their own groups, and I had to put an extra effort to say like, oh hey, I'm also a human being here trying to learn just like you guys. Would it be possible for me to actually be part of your guys' group? So finding that sense of community was really. Was really something that I put an extra effort into, and as I've experienced these aspects, I've always questioned myself every single day. I've told myself whether I am a worthy student of really being here and having the opportunity to access all these resources. I've asked myself whether the admission committee has accidentally pressed on yes and selected me as a student here. So as I went through, this process of adjustments, there were lots of self-doubt and hits on self-esteem, which really questions not only you being as a student, but also whether you still want to, pursue medicine. Because what this idea of, being a rigorous person, being tough, adaptable, and everything else that I talk about in medicine, and I said, man, if I can't get through these courses, how am I even going to get through medical school and just the process of, ahead of it? So not only, I would say, challenges in academia, but also challenges as a human being as well too, which of course really allowed me to shape myself in a way that that I am being vulnerable to myself, but also how much I would like to share with others, where they would get to know me, not only as a regular classmate, but also as a human being, where we could really create genuine connections and be a support for one another. So those are some things that I would mention were truly the highlights of transitioning from a smaller institution into a larger institution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate. I mean, going from high school, and I was in a pretty small high school, going to University of Washington, massive university, thousands and thousands of students, you see new faces every single day. And at first, yeah, it's hard to adapt for sure, especially in your case when like English, as you said, was also not, your first language, obviously, or anything. It must have been even tougher for you, and me as well as an aspiring physician. Like, I'm always doubting how much I can take. Also, when it comes to thinking about the future and like, okay, if I'm struggling in this course right now in undergrad, how am I going to like get through medical school, right? I'm also having these thoughts all the time. Even though like I'm a confident person, I'm usually confident when it comes to things, but then there's always doubts. I don't know, when you get a lower grade than you expected, or when just something doesn't go your way, you don't get some kind of scholarship, whatever it is. There's always some kind of doubt just at the back of your head, and it's hard to avoid it. But I mean, as long as you're consistent, you're showing up, you're doing the work, you're day in, day out, you're just putting in the effort, trying your best. That's all that matters. And I think as long as you do that, you will get to where you want to get to.
Truly.
Yes.
Just add on to what you've shared, which I truly found valuable. You've mentioned about this idea of always chasing forward, right? Like, okay, if I can't do this, what's going to happen next, right?
Yeah.
And kind of reflecting onto your transition from especially high school to college, it's it's an entirely different beast when it comes to the personality or characters of people too, right? And you look at yourself and hundreds of other students around you. You may have I'm sure we've had classmates that were just as soon as they see a visual or just an information, they would instantly, right, keep it on their brain and be like, oh, wait, you've got it. It's all good. Not a problem at all. And, I admire them. I look up to them very much. And I say, wow, it's truly impressive. But I just, I'm not that kind of a person who takes everything instantly and be like, okay, I got it. No problem at all. I gotta spend more time.
Same for me.
These thoughts certainly comes from the idea of comparison as well too, right? Where we're talking about medicine and what's beyond. This idea of competitiveness always comes up, but I think if we're able to find ways in which we are able to take that idea of competitiveness and utilize it in a healthy way to improve ourselves and not necessarily not necessarily focus on what other people have done, which has been recognized by others, and focus on what works for us and see how we may be able to uplift people who look like us, who learn like us. As I truly believe that there are people like us that share similar experiences, but we just can't, or we just feel uncomfortable to take that step forward and ask the person near us and be like, oh, hey, are you also struggling in that class, or are you having issues with understanding this concept, right? It's just that, I don't know, that thought of, if I were to ask this question, or if I were to approach this, like, how are they going to think about me, or how will the instructor think about me, or how will this question of mine will shape our future conversations, right? There are lots of question marks that we put in our head without even trying what may happen, right? So there's truly put hesitation. So I'm so glad you mentioned that idea of transition and how it really differentiates, no matter whether you're coming from a high school to undergrad or a community college to undergrad. It doesn't mean that even though you may have gotten the taste of 2 years of undergrad at a smaller community, at a smaller institution, it means that you're set yourself to a more successful transition into a large institution. It truly doesn't make a difference. Challenges are always there. Transitions are always challenging.
You have to face the challenges. You can't avoid it. There's no way around it. I mean, it's like a one-way road with an obstacle. You have to get through that obstacle. There's no other alternative route you can take. So you just have to learn how to be resilient, how to face your challenges without, trying to find for alternative paths, because there often isn't. That's just simply how it is in a lot of aspects of life.
100%.
Yeah. Now let's move on to talking about your research. You've spent 2 years as a research assistant in a neonatal neuroscience lab at UW Medicine. What drew you to neonatal research specifically? And what was some of the research that you did at that neuroscience, neonatal neuroscience lab at UW Medicine?
Yeah. So I've had some past personal experiences that kind of led my interest in neuroscience, but I just never knew what would that really be, whether it's neonatal or something else in the field of neuroscience. But that science is neuroscience. That interest was always there based on past experiences. But when I was a student at Greenberg College, I think it was also in the midst of COVID as well too. There was a what do you call like a summer global youth research symposium or something along those lines, where people from all over the nation would instructors, especially professors who have done work in the past in the realm of research, they would present their work, and us as participants would listen to them and see the wonderful work that they do. And among those participants, my research PI, Dr. Tommy Wood, he was one of the presenters there. And as soon as he began speaking about his work, I was like, and it was a 2-day conference. There were tons of people speaking, and I think at least 50 people speaking in that entire day. And after all, you're like, oh man, listening to too many people, you get a headache and such. But as soon as my PI began to speak, I was like, man, you gotta, turn up the volume, because he's just so awesome. And the more he speaks, the more I just, listen with awe. And I think that's where my interest in neonatal aspect really began, because I just saw his work and the wonderful work that he has done, and I was like, wow, this is just super cool. At the end, he shared his contact information. I just followed up with him. I was like, loved your work. Would love to stay in touch and learn more about the work that you do. And he was extremely kind. So I was able to stay in touch with him by the time that I transferred to University of Washington. But then also the aspect of research and being able to read scientific papers, interpret the data that is given. These were aspects that I wasn't necessarily super confident, because at a community college, the aspect of research is way more limited, and being able to develop these skill sets was not necessarily something that I've thought about really in depth until I got the chance to meet with Dr. Wood. And he was also hosting a summer journal club, which was called the Better Health Club, and he was bringing students from all over the world together to just pick on a topic that brings them interest, whether it's in neuroscience or longitudinal health, and do a presentation about them. And other people who guest to listen, they would provide feedback and just ask questions. He kindly invited me to be part of that, just to get my feet rolling and understand the idea of research, be more comfortable with reading articles, and so on. So really much appreciation to him. And then at the end of my toward the end of my journey at Greenwood College, my mom was pregnant, and we now I have a 2.5-year-old baby sister. So soon before graduation, I had a baby sister, and my mom was kind of on the little older edge. So there were certain risks that we had to endure as well too, and just seeing this process of pregnancy and all this responsibility that comes with it at an age where you're more aware of your surroundings and just know what is going on in a more detailed way. It's like, yeah, there are lots of work that needs to be done in this way. So at the end, puzzle pieces really came together in a way that really worked out okay. And by the time I transitioned to University of Washington and got the chance to work with my teammates, in addition to just having an interest, and what I see is, everyone can really do research and quote unquote some fascinating and cool research. But I feel like if you do not have a team that really supports your learning and giving you opportunities to make mistakes and learn from them, and I don't really think that research would be really worthwhile at the end. It would be the coolest thing in the world, but as long as you don't have teammates that really supports your learning, I do not think it's really the right place to be in there. And some of the work that I've done in our lab consisted of gyrification, specifically the impact of preterm birth and the hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, which is a condition where the brain receives insufficient oxygen and blood supply during childbirth, and it unfortunately increases the risk of neonates or babies developing various neurological conditions later in life. And I specifically focused on gyrification, which is the process of the idea of folding patterns that creates gyri and sulci, so the dents and grooves. But the simple way that I like to say is it's those wrinkly stuff that forms in our brains. So I've utilized the MRIs of species like ferrets and non-human primates to see how neonatal hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy impacts the arrangements of gyri and sulci, and whether they have an impact on the development of the baby. So these are some of the work that we have done, and again, there were so much learning experiences that I've had, and it couldn't have been more fun without the interactions I've had with my teammates. Because thanks to their support, thanks to their resilience, thanks to the motivation they provided to, which allowed me to build that resilience. Those are really what made this work much fun and excited than I've expected. And yeah, I'm still in touch with our teammates, and if they're watching now, much love and gratitude to them as well too. So those are just some reflections within that work.
Beautiful. And you also had a publication, I think, that explores neonatal hypoxia, ischemia, and brain developments. Why do you think this area of research, especially, is so crucial for long-term health outcomes?
Certainly. So the way that I kind of think about it is, as newborns, there are a lot that we get to explore, right? There are bunch of neural connections we get to make from the moment that we are born up until, of course, our last throughout our life. I would say I was trying to find the best way to mention that, but so from the moment that we're born up until the end, there are various neural connections that goes into it, and conditions like hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, or as well as various other neurological conditions, or just any condition that may impact the brain development. I feel like it really shapes how that individual may experience their lives later on. Because what happens is, as we get to explore and learn various things when we are much younger, they also kind of build a character, build a thought on what we may want to do later in our journey as well too. So, if while we're making those while we're making those neural connections, if there are challenges that we experience, whether that is due to a condition or rather life experiences, then they shape how we see our world and the people that we get to connect with as well too. And of course, throughout our lifetime, there are various synaptic pruning that happens, which reduces the number of weak synaptic connections we have if we were to not utilize the skill sets that we get to use later on, right? So I truly believe that early life has a great impact on what we're doing later on as well too. So brain development, brain health really starts early on, and I do think it shapes the character, the life experiences, and the conditions that we get to see later on as well too. And based on my experiences too, and I believe, especially in the area of psychiatry and psychology, one of the questions that we get to, that I've consistently heard is, what has happened in the past that led them to be in the space that they are now? And just understanding what may have happened in the past, what conditions were part of the lifestyle of that individual, then it also allows us to make inferences on, how we may be able to approach what may have happened in the past. What is the best way for us to really understand this condition in a way that is personalized for the patient? So I do think that past tells us a lot about what may happen in the future, and I found that really fascinating as I got the chance to learn from our staff members and teammates throughout our lab, especially in the realm of longitudinal health.
Incredible. Very, very well explained and super insightful. And I'm wondering, how has doing research exploring neonatal hypoxia, ischemia, and brain development changed the way that you think about patient care and medicine more broadly?
Certainly. So the way that I kind of approach this is by the time that we are thinking about medicine, it's all about these hands-on work that we get to do with the patient and the interactions that we get to have, but also there, various medications that we get to speak about. But then it's also important to think about aspects where, what happened in the background that allowed us to, for instance, reach to the point that we are now. And it's something I'd like to reflect on is throughout our lab, we got the chance to hear and learn from various neonatologists and people who are expert in the field of neonatal neuroscience. And I've had the pleasure of shadowing some neonatologists in the NICU, Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. And it was truly fascinating experience just getting to see the treatment options that they utilize. For instance, vitamin B and caffeine, which there were lots of research done in the past that which makes them a potential neuroprotective agent toward HIE, and with their aspect of reducing cell death, oxidative stress, reducing inflammation. These aspects should. And I've looked at it and I said, okay, there are people in our lab that have, when we're currently doing work on vitamin B and caffeine, and seeing how much work we do in the background to be able to build the knowledge we have and be able to apply it in a clinical world. I do think it really provided me a wonderful insight on just the importance of medicine as a holistic point of view. So it's medicine is not necessarily getting to work with the patient, get those treatments, see what are their effects, so on and so forth, but also appreciating the really hard work people have done to allow us to reach that phase, whether it's through knowledge, whether that's through application, innovation. There are people who have done work which allowed us to utilize those technologies and various other tools for us to really maximize the patient care. So it really provided me a sense of appreciation toward that holistic work that is done in the world of medicine to provide the best experience possible for the patient.
And hopefully you'll be even more involved in this as you go on in your journey to becoming a physician.
Hopefully. That's certainly a goal.
Hopefully. Now, you're also certified in BLS, naloxone administration, and phlebotomy, which is amazing. And I'm very interested in practical, hands-on clinical stuff. Stuff that just goes beyond the textbook, which I find boring a lot of the time, to be honest. And I'm wondering, how do these hands-on clinical skills complement academic learning for future physicians from your perspective?
Mm-hmm. Agree. Another wonderful question. I would say this sense of being able to utilize your hands. I think it's just a something special where it provides a further sense of motivation to the work that we do. Of course, as you mentioned, right, like textbooks and all these knowledge that we get to build, it's great. Like, we all have these robotic information that is embedded in us, right? But what is our purpose at the end is being able to utilize the information we've learned and utilize them in a way that would help the patient to get better. And knowing the glycolysis, knowing the cellular respiration, and explaining it to the patient, that's not what will make them get better, right? But rather being able to utilize your hands-on skills in that sense as well too. And as you mentioned early on, we wouldn't be able to know until we try it, right? And I think it's really the key concept here, because there is an idiom which mainly popular in the Turkish culture, but also in other Middle East and Southeast Asian cultures too, they would say if it were to be done by just watching, cat would also become a butcher. So the idea with this is, there are lots of cats, especially in Turkey, in the streets, and they would always see these butchers, cutting the meats and everything, right? And if they were able to also cut meats through just watching, they would have also become butchered the next day, right?
Of course, yeah.
And that's kind of, that's kind of the idea I always approach. And I say, if you really want to get through the challenge of it, you've really got to experience it, right? We're seeing people from far or through the computer screens and say, oh, hey, this individual plays this instrument super well. This individual does this sport incredibly well. This individual utilizes these tools to perform these surgeries incredibly well, right? And by just watching, we're like, oh, hey, yeah, I can definitely do it. Not a problem. But, as soon as we get to utilize these hands that are given to us, I think it's truly a humbling experience. And that's what I think it really, the idea of complementation comes from, where, we may have all this confidence with knowledge and just brain power, I would say. But until we, by the moment that we get to utilize our hands, then it's like, oh yeah, I do also need to obtain skills in addition to what I have earlier learned in the aspect of knowledge. So learning, utilizing hands, and I think it's a powerful tool, but also a humbling experience to see how much hard work gets into being able to utilize our body, and the connection of knowledge as well as skill sets. So I truly find that valuable in that sense.
Yeah, it's I think of it as like you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if it's just stored in your brain and you don't put it to use by like using your hands, what's the point, right? What's the value of that if you don't actually apply that knowledge? That's why practical hands-on skills, clinical applications in medicine, or it goes beyond medicine. I mean, what we're talking about here. It's just so important. It's more than just reading a book, more than watching videos, acquiring knowledge. Until you don't actually do it practically, in my opinion, it's not useful. I mean, you have to use your hands. You have to use whatever you have at your disposal to actually make use of things that you've learned and all the knowledge and information you've acquired over time. And I mean, a field like medicine, like healthcare, is just it doesn't have to be stated how important it is. Like it's a given, really. And I'm wondering now, over the next few years or so, where do you see yourself focusing most in clinical medicine or in research, advocacy, a blend of all of them? What exactly?
Yeah, that's a question I get to ask myself, I think almost every single day as well.
Yeah.
But as of now, I'm currently in the process of preparing for the MCAT and the medical school application that is coming up in this upcoming 2026 cycle. So my focus right now is just getting those priority tasks done in that sense. But yeah, thinking of a couple of years from now, of course, we'll be able to continue this journey of becoming a physician, but also you've mentioned about the idea of research and advocacy. I find, like I said, I've so much value in the realm of research. So that's something that I always like to have as part of my journey, as I truly think that there are so much that we learn in the idea of work in the background and being able to process those information into the work that we do now, as well as advocacy, being a first-generation student, a person of color, and coming up from underserved and socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds. There are a lot that goes into deciding to pursue a career in medicine or healthcare professionals in general. every single person that I get to meet, they have a story, which I believe that must be heard by everyone else around the world, as as it really provides something about that person. As soon as we get to see our patients, there are lots of thoughts that we built in our minds, looking at our charts and their past history on their condition. But then it's like, okay, that's great, but what it really led them to, see me today, and there are a lot that goes into it, and not only that condition in itself, but also the life experiences and the story of that person, which really encompasses them as a human being, in addition to being a patient in that sense. So, of course, clinical medicine, pursuing my goal of becoming a physician. Research is truly something that I found valuable, and stay in touch with the teammates that I have built over the years, and really built the idea of advocacy, especially as we also get to do this podcast. It is also an opportunity for me to share my story, share my perspective, share what I have learned from my past experiences and from my elders with the rest of the world. Really, truly a special thanks to you as well as your teammates for really hosting such such opportunities for younger generations, as there are so many question marks that we get to have, and we look for people who may be able to answer those questions, perhaps not perfectly, but rather provide us an idea to see what we may do further with those information. And that's why I truly believe that the work of advocacy, or the work of just spreading the word out and having our voice heard, happens with the idea of working as a team and providing that trust to one another, providing that support to one another. Again, that idea of competitiveness will always be there, right? Which is great. I mean, we love competitiveness, right? But I always approach it, competitiveness, as a way for us to connect with one another, rather than finding opportunities to turn it into a rage, a jealousy, rather than opportunity to destruct communities, destruct connections, destruct friendships, relationships, and utilize them in a way that allows us to collaborate together, learn from one another, and find opportunities to uplift in ways that allows us to, take steps forward in our own journeys. There's this idea of individualism in the United States, which really forces us to pursue kind of what we have in our own mind. But, for those ideas to come into a reality, there were so many people that we have spoke to in the past, whether it's our instructors, our mentors, our parents, our friends, and just, any other individual. And there's so much appreciation that goes into them. So, for us to think about ourselves, we also have to acknowledge the people that helped us to gain skill sets, that helped us to gain the confidence that we have now, which assisted us to also think about ourselves. Because then it's like, if I only think about myself, there's this idea of course, like, oh, okay, I'm have this ego, have this thought of being that one single person that's seeking or chasing greatness. But that confidence really builds thanks to the people that we get to speak with and get to learn from. So again, without sticking together, I do not think we would understand the value of understanding what it really means to being an individual as well, too.
I'm rooting for you, man. I'm rooting for you all the way.
Thanks.
Based on all of your experiences, which you have an extensive list on, and all your skills as well, I want you to provide some kind of advice for youth in STEM, because many students today, as you probably know as well, they feel torn between science, leadership, community work, etc. And I'm wondering, I mean, from your perspective, and you have some very valuable insights and advice. So I want you to take a moment and think about this. Um, what advice would you give to these students who are trying to navigate multiple passions at the same time?
100%. It's really a wonderful question, really extensive question at the same time. And I always say, remember who you are, remember your why, and remember your why and remember your how. Um, Kind of the way that I think about it is our lives has changed entirely compared to 5 to 10 years ago. Now, what I'm seeing now is, for instance, being part of these various leadership positions and extracurricular activities and all these other aspects that that allows us to build this skill sets as a higher education, well, as we get to pursue higher education overall. So now there's this expectation of having all these skill sets built much earlier on. I've get to see people who are in like what, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. Again, I'm truly amazed. So much respect. I really look up to them. Being involved in really extensive research, doing various leadership positions, and I'm just tasks that I personally had no idea that they've existed when I was an 8th grade, 9th grade, or 10th grade student. And I know that our world is going to change every single day, and the expectation that have upon the younger generation will continue to get further and further. And people will say, oh, hey, well, I guess now the quote unquote the normal of being successful in academia as well as work begins with starting research and leadership in 7th grade and 8th grade. That's kind of what our norm has been shifting. Whereas a couple of years ago, it's like, by the time that you are in college, then this, idea of research and leadership and all these other activities come by. So at the end, you think about it, you're like, there's no way that I am going to make every single person happy that I get to meet, right? And that's why I encourage the idea of remembering your why and how and who you really work with. There will always be going to days where you're going to feel like there's no tomorrow. Things will happen, right? But knowing our values, being able to share them with our loved ones, it's something that I feel incredibly valuable. I found so much value in it, and especially based on my personal experiences. I am the first person in my family to pursue not only not only obtain a bachelor's degree, but also pursue higher education. And there were many times where I sat down with my parents and explained what it really means to be a college student, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't only consist of going to your classes, taking notes, doing your homework, coming back home and be done, right? There are tasks that we need to take on in order to understand what the health professional is about, what medicine is about, whether I'd really find myself as someone who can provide value in that field. And there are activities that we need to do in order to develop thoughts for that, right? And also growing up, I'm the oldest of 4 siblings, and grew up in culture where I was expected to have an answer for every single question that I get to ask. Then there's this idea of like, if I were to share about the tough aspects of being a college student, what is really remaining as a human being, right? Feeling the stress, acknowledging and embracing the challenges that we take on. I've told myself, man, if I were to explain to my parents, what are they gonna think about me, right? Are they gonna think that their son has changed and these challenges change his stuff and all this stuff? But as soon as I brought up myself together, picked up the courage, and had these conversations with my parents, every single question that I had in my mind, they literally went away. No parent in this world would want to see their children being sad or upset in just any shape or form. So as we were getting through these challenges, as we feel lonely, as we feel like there's no tomorrow, as we feel like we're not worthy of being here, I truly encourage all of us to speak with our family, speak with our loved ones, have an opportunity for them to also understand what we're going through. As in my case, the more I shared with my parents, the more they were also able to adjust their perspectives on how they may be able to support my younger siblings as well too. Because again, being a student didn't necessarily only consist of the academic work, but also developing as a human being as well. So again, there's so much that I can share in that sense, but I'll just wrap it up by saying, every single person around us, they're gonna do their own things to succeed in their own lives, accomplish their own purpose within their values, whether it's family, whether it's career, whether it's academia, whether it's anything else that they have in mind. We're always trying to, chase this thing of what is the right thing for me to do, right? Preparing for the MCAT, getting into med school, deciding whether we want to do research or not, or just deciding whether we want to be in this activity or not. There's just always sort of, okay, someone else has done it, I must do it. This has done it, I must do it too. And this idea of must brings really, this builds this sense of pressure that we built on ourselves. And something that my parents have always told me is, they've always this funny story. They've asked me, like, where did you learn how to behave? Where did you learn to build your attitude? And I said, oh, hey, mom, dad, I've learned from you guys. I've learned from my elders. I've learned from people that I get to meet. And it's like, yeah, you're right. But keep your perspective a little bit broad. And I said, what you mean, mom, dad? And they've said, you've actually learned how to behave by looking up to people who do not know how to behave. So it's like you're not doing the same thing that they have done. And I think that was really the motto of myself too, right? I get to speak with people with respect. I get to understand them. I get to understand their perspective. But whatever they may have done, or whatever the majority have done, it doesn't mean that it is necessarily the right thing to do also for me as well too, right? Mm-hmm. I have my own values. I have my own story. I have my own goals and aspirations that I would like to accomplish. And if it means that it happens in a longer period of time, or if it means it happens in a different way than what majority have done, that is totally fine. That is totally fine. As long as I say, together with family, together with people that I care for, together with my values and things that bring me meaningful experiences, that's really all I seek for at the end of the day. Again, anyone can say anything that they want, but we're truly the ones that making these decisions in order to see what or how we would like to shape our lives later on. So those are just some thoughts that kind of putting it out there. Of course, there's so much more to talk on, but those are some uplifting thoughts there.
Certainly. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts about that. And I think, everyone is on their own path. There's no right or wrong thing. Like, there's no must, as you said, like, just because someone else did it doesn't mean you have to do it. Everyone has their unique path. They have their unique circumstances. They have their unique interests, ambitions, goals. No two people have the same thoughts and opinions and shared interests or whatever. We all differ in at least a couple of ways, let's say. And I think what makes us especially unique is that, yes, we might be influenced by others, whether it's our parents, whether it's siblings, whether it's friends, whoever, professors. But ultimately, it's how we perceive the world, and it's what we take from that influence that shapes who we are. and also just our internal thoughts and beliefs and feelings that has been shaped by, too many things to name, that makes us who we are, shapes what we want to pursue. So I think you pointed that out very well, and I like that you also quoted what your mom said. And this is something that I would love to share with especially more youth in STEM, who are still trying to find their path, who are trying to discover how to balance so many things at once, especially as youth become more multifaceted. You see like younger people getting into research or whatever. It's complex, and I mean it's just natural because of increasing access to information and everything. But also just trying to navigate all of these complexities. I mean, it requires advice from older, more experienced people like you, Arian. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that.
Of course.
That brings us to the end of today's episode of Across STEM with YSI. A huge thank you to you, Arian, for joining us and sharing such a thoughtful, grounded, and inspiring journey that you've had so far. From your path through community college to the University of Washington, from neonatal neuroscience research to national leadership, and from multilingual advocacy to hands-on clinical training. I can go on and on. Your story really shows us that medicine is not just built in labs and lecture halls, but in relationships and lived experiences and moments of genuine human connection, which I think is just so incredibly important. And what stands out to me personally is how intentionally you move through every space you're in, not just asking, how can I succeed, but how can I bring others with me? And that mindset is exactly what the future of medicine, what the future of STEM needs. It needs physicians and scientists who understand equity not as an add-on, but as a responsibility. And I think you really embody that very well. And I am very excited to have you speak at STEM Quest 3.0, which is just around the corner, starting on Monday, and can't wait for your session in January. So I hope more and more students just like myself can see you talk about these things and all the amazing things that you researched about and all the amazing things that you've done outside of that research as well. So Arian, before we close, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience? Whether it's a message for students who don't yet see themselves reflected in medicine, let's say, or a reminder for future physicians about the kind of impact that they can have beyond the clinic, you can share any last remaining thoughts that you have.
Well, for sure. Well, first and foremost, thanks very much once again for having me as part of this podcast. I think it's also one of my first experiences to be in such space and just speaking in a way that really reflects on these experiences. There are so many thoughts that we want to speak on, and I'm sure there will be aspects where, like, after we're done with this podcast, be like, oh hey, I would have loved to also share this and have others hear this too. But it's just so awesome having these opportunities to reflect on these instant thoughts and see what comes up with just really genuine conversations. So I appreciate it.
Special.
100%, right? Really well said. And yeah, I'm so glad that I've had the opportunity to have a conversation with someone like yourself who embodies the importance of people who are new to their journey of higher education, academia, research, or rather, what we call these critical skills. Everyone really talks about making a change and doing all these wonderful stuff, but you and your teammates have taken the step already to to provide opportunities for others in order to climb these mountains and reach to the peak that they've always been wanting to see, right? Which is really one of the most beautiful places, right? Being able to see the entire world from the peak of the mountain. So I'm so glad and really appreciative of the work that you and your teammates have done from the very beginning up until now to provide such supports. It's really embodying and really look up to that in many aspects. And well, lastly, I think I'll wrap up by saying that we hear stories, we hear people, we get to meet with people, and there's just always aspect of like, oh hey, if I were to learn this or learn this and that, we will make everything disappear. We make all the problems disappear. Or you mentioned about like the journey of high school and going into college, and me getting to know learn the language, community college, and then now here, there are always times I was like, okay, hey, let's learn the language, everything will be okay. Let's get through these classes, everything will be okay. Let's go through this undergrad journey, everything will be okay. This research, okay, right? Get through med school, okay, right? There's this always idea of like, okay, if I were to, get this specific test done, everything will be okay, I will feel great, right? But as soon as we find ourselves in that situation, we're like, oh man, there are so many things that I still need to consider in order to feel that sense of okayness, right? So the more that we tell ourselves that, hey, if I were to get this done, I'm going to feel, okay or happy just with myself, I really encourage everyone who's watching to embrace that moment, enjoy that moment as much as possible. As whenever we're done with that moment, I promise you there are so many things that we would like to go back to, reflect on that, and be able to relive those experiences once again. But we may not have that opportunity. So rather than focusing on, okay, let me get this, let me be done with this work and I will be happy, try to find ways that you can be happy at that moment and bring yourself meaningful experiences, right? And we get to speak with people, like I mentioned, and get to know them, have them as our mentors and some people that we look up to, and we were trying to minimize the number of challenges we get to have, but the idea isn't necessarily not making every single problem disappear, but not disappearing when we are facing those problems. So those problems, those challenges, those obstacles will always be there. And, rather than making them disappear, I do think that we also need to focus on ourselves and making sure that we do not disappear and do not forget ourselves, our family, people that we have looked up to, people that have done so much for us to be here today, being able to chase these opportunities as just reflecting on everything that has been happening around the world. I feel incredibly privileged to be here, being able to speak these thoughts in comfort and peace in a way that it is, it's heard by people who may share similar experiences like us and who may be different than us, which they could also have this perspective as, as they get to pursue their higher education journey. So let's try not to make, there's this challenge disappear, which is awesome, right? But also remember that, we got to appear to be able to face those challenges as well.
Beautifully said, and an amazing way to end this session. Just have to face the challenges. Again, it's like a one-way road, obstacle, no other way around it. You have to get through it. So just be resilient. Be resilient. Approach things with an open mind and have courage. Have courage and going back to using your hands, use your knowledge, put it to good use, just like use it practically. Don't keep it in your head, put it out there. I think that is, it goes beyond, again, medicine and healthcare. It's such an important thing to consider in any aspect of life. So
we're doing it right now, don't we? Right? We're doing it right now as we're having conversation, right? Extending our thoughts,
right?
Right?
We're doing it right now.
It's always applicable.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I really appreciate you being on this episode, Arian, in this 15th episode of Across Time with YSI. And you're truly an inspiring person. I mean, one of those inspiring people that I've met, even though this is the first time we've talked to each other. And it's amazing that you also went to the University of Washington, same university. And it's the inspiring people like you at the University of Washington that really makes me love it so much. So thank you so much. And for the audience, again, Arian will be at the upcoming STEM Quest 3.0, and you can see him talk in January. So hopefully you'll be there at his session. Thank you so much, Arian.
Awesome. Thanks, Amirali. Thanks very much
I
for the invite
appreciate
once
it.
again.
Take care, bro.
All right, you too.